hold on tight. 'Cause you know tomorrow may not bring that same thing that you said last night. Woo! Every time I find a little peace of mind, I hold on tight. 'Cause tomorrow may not bring the very same thing. No, no, no. Said none of the right there. You that care all. Just for me, I'm so glad that you that care all. Just for me, I'm so glad that you that care all. For a sinner like me.
But see, I was a very defiant, mouthy, rebellious kid, and I was ready to fight, right? I got that from my dad.
Well, hello, Ayanna. How are you today?
I am good, Bill. How are you doing today?
Simply fantastic, Ayanna, and thank you for asking me. Well, thank you for taking this time today, Ayanna, to share some of the things about you and some of the things on your story and some of the things that you're going to be talking about we know will encourage someone somewhere. Is that okay?
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for asking me to come.
Well, let me just sit back and you start where you feel you need to start.
All right, that sounds good. Well, you know, everybody has a story, and everybody has been through something, and many of us have been able to overcome many of these obstacles that we have faced in our lives. But the story always starts in the beginning, in your childhood. The memories, the scars, the wounds, the trauma, the tragedies that you face can trickle into your adulthood. So I like to start in my early adolescence, in the beginning of some of my traumas and some of my obstacles that I faced, which built me to be the lady I am today. I've been running for most of all my life, and I was realizing that I was running. It wasn't just me, it was the flesh of me that were running, and it was a spiritual warfare that was running because all my life the devil's trying to always trap me up. But God, the beauty of God is he was with me every step of the way, and he's shown himself in so many times and occasions in my life. If it wouldn't be for his grace and mercy, I wouldn't be here. My early adolescence and where some of my struggles went. So, you know, many people have issues with their parents. And, you know, as I look back now as being a parent myself and now a grandparent, parents do the best they can and they're only equipped with what they know and they have their own traumas. And kids don't understand that, nor should we, because we're the kids, right? But our parents have not dealt with their trauma, and their trauma trickles down to how they interact with us as their kids and how they raise us up. So me and my mom used to be at not a good place growing up. We always had a challenge, you know, and we weren't always able to get along. And then I had a father that had a lifestyle that was different from my mom. So my mom was an educator. She was college educated. She tried to live a wholesome life, but we had a disconnect in our relationship. And then I had my father who was wild as all get out, bike rider, substance abuse user, wasn't too nice to ladies, was just kind of a dominant male that was a little bit over the top. So those are my two parents, and I'm stuck in the middle of them.
When you say you started most of your life like that, could you tell, like, where were you born? Like, where were you raised when this was going on?
So I was born here in Denver, Colorado. And, you know, most of my life, the early part of my life, I was living with my mom. And then I moved in with my father when I turned 11 years old.
The household unit that had cracks and failures in it has a lot to do with the children of that family.
Yes.
And you're getting ready to share with us some of the effects it had on you.
Yes.
Okay, come on with it.
You know, again, my mom and my dad always had tension, between them. And again, parents forget that there's kids that are in the middle that are witnessing these actions and behaviors. And because sometimes parents can't overcome their trauma and pain that they have and resentment towards that other parent, they take it out on the child, the innocent person, which the child becomes a victim somewhat in the crossfire of their parents' mess.
Yes.
And so with my mom, she had me, but I was so much like my dad with some of my characteristics that I think it caused somewhat of a resent towards me, and we always clashed. I was very defiant with her. I wasn't following the rules. And she tried to put me in different interventions and groups, but it didn't work because there was that disconnect. And sometimes parents forget that even their words can say one thing, but their body language and energy can produce something different. Kids could feel that energy. And so it became a point when I was 11. That's when I started skipping school, started smoking cigarettes.
Wait. Okay, I'm sorry. I know this is too quick.
Oh. Okay.
At 11, you were skipping school and smoking cigarettes. Not you.
Yeah. And I laugh about these cigarettes because I can't even believe it, but smoking cigarettes and drinking wine coolers at 11 years old. I ran away, and in the middle was a tornado. I never forget, I was going to East Middle School, and there was a tornado warning, and my mom was at work. She was a teacher, and she couldn't find me, and she panicked because I was missing in the middle of this tornado. That's what my baby behavior was also at that time, like a tornado, defiant, wild, loose. She didn't even know the outcome. And so by the time she found me that evening, she packed my box up, packed my little black and white TV up, couple items, and said, "You out of here, you home with your dad." So she dropped me off to my dad at 11, a man that had my brother, who was older, who was a single man, who had his own demons. And she dropped me as a girl off to him at his door. And she left.
Excuse me. I heard your mother was an educator, and I just wanted to know when you said your father had his own demons. And I'm very sensitive to what you're talking about because it seems like you're in a situation and the reality of your situation or the way that situation was handled was to take you somewhere where maybe there were possibly even more demons, more headaches, more things that you had to deal with. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, but my mom, later on, as we will talk, as I had to deal with this trauma as an adult, she said she didn't know some of these things that my dad was dealing with.
Okay. She wasn't quite aware of all that she was putting you into.
That's what she tells me.
That's what she tells you. Okay, we're gonna leave that alone. Okay, so you're back. You're at your dad's door with your box. That's what you call it. You didn't say a suitcase. You said your box. Okay, so you're there with your box and your black and white TV or your TV. Okay, pick it up from there.
I go into this male dominant home with my father and my older brother, who I love dearly. And I was in a culture shock. For one, my dad was very dominant, aggressive. My dad was a womanizer. My dad was an IV drug user. My dad was a person that on the outside looked like he had everything because financially he was stable, but on the inside he was cracked. He was broken. And he was abusive to me, my brother, to his women, to himself, because again, he's harming himself. He has a drug problem. And he wasn't loving himself enough. That's why he medicated himself with his own drugs. So in the meantime, I'm living with my father, trying to adjust to the new neighborhood, the new school, trying to adjust because he was very strict. You couldn't really go outside, you couldn't do much. Everything was dictated. I call him a dictator. Everything was so many restrictions, but there was really no justification to why. Which again, you take me, who was already rebellious, that gave me an opportunity to now sneak out when I wanted to, do what I wanted to do, make my own friends. In the meantime, my own brother was self-medicating with my dad's weed, and he would show me how to smoke weed, and we would get high and try to hide and just maintain and live in this dang jungle and try to survive. That was from 11 until about 14. I was with my father, but in the meantime, my brother, my safety net, left. He couldn't take it anymore, and he joined the military. So it was just me and my father. That was different because I didn't have my protector. My brother would take a many of whoopings for me. My brother would always try to step up for me so I wouldn't get whooped and he would get whooped. And I'll be the one that did the bad thing and he would cover up every time. So imagine my safety net was gone because he could no longer live with my dad, who was just so abusive and out of control. Mind you, my father had different women that we had to deal with. And I was such a mouthy kid myself that some women that my dad had, it was difficult because they try to act like they cared about me, but it was just to get close to my dad, and I wasn't the one. You know, I would let them know, I don't need your help. I got a mama. I got an auntie. Your gifts don't mean anything to me. You're here today, but tomorrow somebody else would be here. And they would tell my dad, your daughter's mouthy, your daughter's this, your daughter's that. And he thought it was funny. So thank God I didn't get in trouble for that because I guess he didn't care about them.
From 11 to 14, you were in the house. Your brother left. Now you're there alone. And if it was a way for you to sneak out, you're older now. And if your father's still conducting himself like that, then it seemed like you could do about whatever you wanted to do at that time.
Yeah, because I did kind of missed out some pieces because my dad sometime would be gone for 3 and 4 days at a time because he was on a binge. And when he was on a binge, who was going to watch us? I would go to my great grandpa's parents across the street, and then I could do, a little bit over there. And then if my brother was home before he left, it'd just be me and my brother. And then when he would come back and he'll sleep for a day, he'll wake up and he was a monster. All hell broke loose because he's coming down off of whatever he was out there using. His mood was messed up. He was depressed, guilty, drained, spent up his money, and he would take it out on us. In the midst of some of these things, that's when I was still using, self-medicating myself, smoking weed, trying to find my way in my neighborhood, trying to play, just trying to adjust, trying to manage. In the meantime, I had to deal with different women that he had in his life. Some were good and some were horrible. I could count, there's 2 women in my dad's life that meant the world to. No, it's actually one. That's my stepmom. That was the only solid one. And he was always mean. He just never treated them right? So imagine being a female child watching a man do a woman like this. So imagine how I struggled in my male relationships as I grew up.
I can really imagine what state of mind that could put you in. From my own personal experiences and the time frames you're talking about, about in my developing, that's when a lot of stuff was happening even for me. And it's like I can really relate to parents that really neglect their children. And not just neglect, abuse them. And here you are talking about 14, and that to me is a little girl. And you're having to deal with grown-up issues. 14.
I watched my dad mistreat women. I watched my dad cheat on women. I watched my dad disrespect women. And the message my dad gave me was, don't ever let a man treat you like this. Watch who you have your babies by, because you're stuck with him for life. And never have a baby with a man to keep him. But again, remember, don't let a man treat you like this. Remember that message. But it's a very important message. But again, it's a blessing at the same time, is why so many men couldn't get so close to me. And I was so dominant with men in relationships. And I set hard boundaries with men in relationships because I remember what those women went through. And I wasn't going to be hurt. So going back to the 14, this was another person. So at 14, I was at Manual High School, and I'm trying to find myself and have friends and do things and, make it up to my dad. I'm spilling out over someone's house and do my own thing, and just started getting wild with my dad. Met this new lady who was younger than him, who she didn't want me there anyway. So one day I came home and told the lady I didn't want to live with my dad no more. And I wanted to go live with my grandparents. And she told me it was a good idea. Helped me pack up my stuff. I bounced. My dad didn't know nothing about it. I go to my grandparents. My mom found out that I was staying at my grandparents, so she came to pick me up. Now, this is the end of 14, ninth grade, the end. She came to pick me up and took me back to her home. I stayed with her home, at her home for 2 weeks, and we're still having conflict, me and my mom, because our stuff wasn't resolved, and I started running away. So I ran from my mom's house, and I went to go stay with a friend for a couple weeks, and I ended up back to my grandparents, and my parents called the police on me. So from there, that's when my life switched again, because I was picked up, had to go to this shelter. It was called Triad for kids that ran away. And then from there, I stayed in the shelter. My mom came, picked me back up, stayed with her for 2 weeks. And next thing she said, I'm dropping you off to a treatment center because you need some help. By this time, I'm 15, and she dropped me off. I'll never forget, to Denver Children's Home on Albion and Colfax, where I stayed for 90 days. No explanation. Told me, I'm dropping you off, you needed help, and dropped me off again. Remember, 11, I was dropped off with a box to a monster. Lived with this man and went through puberty hell. Couldn't take it, didn't know how to deal, started running away. Then my mom puts me into a group home and drops me off, or no, residential home, drops me off. And I'm the one needing help, but nobody asked me what's going on deeply with you. You're a child. What's missing? How can we help you? Remember, I'm the problem, but I didn't ask to be born. So I go into this residential facility for 90 days. And of course, I got in trouble there. Used to fight a lot and get in trouble and defiant. Again, I'm struggling. And so I remember they did the write-up and said, the recommendation, they wanted me to put me in Excelsior group home for girls. It's a locked facility at the time. It's no longer in existence. And the caseworker I had from Denver County at the time said, no, let's do a foster home. So he told me, he said, you have a choice. You can go to a lockup facility to 18, or we can go to a foster home. So I asked him, what is a foster home? Well, it's like a family home. That's what he told me. And you could go to school and do some of the things you like to do, and you'll live in a family setting. So I said, okay, I'll go to the foster home.
I understand that too.
Mm.
I mean, I'm listening to you. It's a different color horses, but it's still a horse. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and I'm feeling you, because the locked girls' home, that's one thing. And just not to cut in, but I have been in a state boys' home. And when you say foster homes, that's where it started, in foster. And, so when you're talking, if I just sit there kind of stunned sometime, it's because hearing a woman speak of things, going through a lot of things that I know I went through as a man, it's just kind of touching. So I'm gonna get on off your story here a little bit, but okay, we getting ready. Where did you choose foster home, or so you chose the foster home?
I chose to go into the foster home, and oh boy, that's another saga. So I didn't know what a foster home was. So the foster, didn't know. I was never a kid that grew up without things,
right?
But I grew up without the emotional support that I needed to help me process and feel whole. I had stuff, but the emotional stuff I didn't have. So when I went into uh, the foster home was horrific. The food was measured, the refrigerators were locked.
What?
We had to clean up, yes, we had to clean up after her dogs. Um, I was in the foster home with young ladies that were victimized of different things of abuse. Some of them were on the streets, selling themselves to live. A lot of girls that had a lot of trauma, and we were in a home that we were just a money ticket. So when I got there, the lady told me, "You can call me mom or by my last name." I said, "Well, you're not my mom. I'm 15 years old." So I called her by her last name because I wasn't looking for a mom. I didn't understand why the refrigerators were locked, the laundry room was locked, our food was issued out. Sometimes you get a piece of bread, piece of chicken. Um, we would have to clean up after her animals. So what I watch is I watched the lady because in the meantime of my behaviors, watching my father trying to manipulate things and sneak around in my own childhood, because I was rebellious. I'm not gonna sit up here and lie. I was defiant. I had ADHD, still do. I was a kid that sometimes was unmanageable, right? Because of my trauma that was not addressed. And so I watched the lady and learned how to get on her good side. And that good side meant that I would go to high school at Manual, tell this lady that I would get out of high school at 2:30 and go get a job. I had a job at McDonald's on Colorado Boulevard, and tell the woman I wouldn't get off to 3 in the morning. And she believed me. That's not the story. Get out of school, go to work about 8, and run the streets all evening long, and then come home about 3 in the morning. Wait for her to drive her school bus off, because she drove a school bus for DPS, stay around the corner and sneak right back upstairs and sleep. Made D's at Manual, barely made classes. She never went to check on my schooling. She never went to check on my attendance. I never remembered the caseworker coming to my house checking on us. So basically, I was just wild. I was out there.
Do you even remember her name?
Yeah, I don't even want to say. Well, I
Okay.
can
No,
say it.
I was
No,
just
no, I
wondering
can say it.
because I
I
only
can say it.
remember one of my foster home people.
I can say her name. She passed. Her name was Miss Daniels. Mind you, she was a Christian lady.
Of course.
And she had this mobile home and would take us all to church and pray for us and all this. But then when we're at home, she treated us like some peasants. And if I wasn't resourceful and have, my job, and then my mom and my aunt and my father would give me money or give me things to buy clothes, I wouldn't have anything. Because back in the day, she used to take the kids and buy their stuff from Yellowfront. There was a store called Yellowfront on Colfax. Yellowfront. She didn't even supply them with anything. I have my own stuff. And I'm thankful that I always knew how to get my own stuff and just didn't settle for just the basics with the lady. But some of the girls didn't have those resources and they were stuck depending on her, not me. I stayed with her until I was 16 and a half. And my parents started hearing, Ayanna's out there. Wow, she's in the streets. She's doing all kinds of stuff, not going to school, not doing anything, just running the streets, hanging out. And my father at this time had left Colorado and moved to Texas. And one day I was at my foster home. There was a knock on the door. I was upstairs, and one of the girls called me and said, "Ayanna, you have a visitor." And I came to the door, and it was this lady. Her name was Melba. And she's like, "Hi, Ayanna." And I was like, "Who are you?" Again, I had a smart mouth. I'm a friend of your dad's. Can you come outside? And I was like, "For what?" So I walked over to the car, and there was my father sitting in the passenger seat.
Oh.
I'm like, "What do you want?" He said, "I'm letting you know what you living in ain't working. Monday morning, your aunt will be in the alley. You get your stuff. And we're going to Texas." And he, at the time, lied. I didn't know. He said, "I withdrew you from Manual. You done here." And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to go." He said, "It's too late. I'm coming to pick you up. You're leaving." Well, when I found out later, my dad never took me out of Manual. He basically kidnapped me from the foster home at 16, and we went to Texas. They didn't know what happened.
Your dad schedules a kidnapping of you to go to another state and didn't finish your business with your school, the state, the foster home, or anything of that nature? Was you on milk cartons? Like, where is she at? She's gone. Or did people kind of know where
No,
you're
I
at?
think because I was 16 and a half. I guess,
Oh,
again, remember I told you earlier, caseworkers weren't coming to the home.
right.
I didn't remember the caseworker dropped me off. There was no follow-up. My mother and father are hearing Ayanna's loose. She's out here smoking weed. She's out here hanging out with different people. She's not going to school. She's just wild. They felt the system has her. And if we don't get her, she's going to be worse, even though my dad, he felt like he was doing better. He bought him another home. And at the time, I thought he was clean. He got a little bit cleaned up, and he was working for some disability thing in Texas. And he felt like, I'm in a better place. Let me get her out of here and let me try again. Maybe that's his way of redeeming himself, right? To come back and get me. He knew I wasn't going anywhere anyway. I wouldn't have graduated from high school. I might end up with 10 kids. I don't know. Could end up dead. I could end up in jail. I don't know. But they didn't know either. So his only thing was, I'm picking my kid up. System ain't helping her anyway. We're out of here. And in that process, I was very angry that I had to leave because I was loose. I had the lady, I manipulated her enough that if I did get on punishment, do some extra chores, she let me get off punishment. I'm running the streets, telling her my life, telling her a story. I was living my best life in foster care, right?
Right.
I was buck wild, living my life, doing the thing. She didn't really care. She got a check. She didn't care. Other kids would run, come and go. I maintained there because I was still good because I was still free. And I do want to talk about one particular person that helped me in this time. I have a best friend, and she's in Oklahoma. Her name is Stacy Burnett. And Stacy was 2 years older than me. She went to Manual. And I got to eat at her house many a day and hang out with her. And she would always look over me and her stepfather. And it was like a safe place. And I had another friend named Carla. Her mom was down the street, and I would go over there to eat, and they made sure they looked after me. So I had some good friends along the way, and I still talk to Stacy to this day and Carla periodically.
All right.
But they helped me get through some of these things, and we was wild. They would tell you we was just wild, but I still had some solid girls in my life at that time,
Praise God.
that cared and their families cared. When I was going to Texas, I was angry. I had to leave what I thought was cool, my best life. My dad moved me out here from Manual to the suburbs, which are all white, to a school that out of 2,000 kids, only 100 were minority. I'm coming from Manual High School, and you take me to Austin, Texas. Kids are wearing boots and cowboy hats to school. I was in a culture shock and angry, secluded, had no friends, had to start all over in this country, backwards to me environment when I came from the city environment. And I was loose from 14 to 16 and a half. Culture shock. So I went to Westwood High School, adjusted, and met a guy. His name was Arthur. And he played sports, and he was a stand-up guy. Dad was a pastor. Mom was, who she was. That's a whole nother drama. But I connected, and he connected with me because he said, you're different. You're different than these people here. I said, you're different. That was my love of my life. So going from sadness, I ended up in a relationship, right? And I was in school, and his family tried to have me involved, but me and my dad were considered wild. He rode a motorcycle, smoked weed, smoked cigarettes, my father. And they're Christian-based, Southern Baptist Christian, and I cussed, and I was kind of wild. And Big Arthur liked me. So anyhow, we worked it out, and at 17, got pregnant with my son Arthur. And that was the beginning of my saving grace, getting pregnant in high school with my son. I didn't finish high school in Texas. They kicked me out of school because in Texas, you didn't go to school pregnant, not to their high schools. You had to go to an alternative school. And they kicked me out. My son's dad got to graduate. This is our senior year. He got to graduate. I didn't. And me and him plotted behind my dad's back, his parents' back. We called my auntie, told her we coming to Denver on a bus. had suitcases hidden in the closet, had our bus tickets. His mom found out at the last minute she was hurt, and we left to Denver. That was the beginning of me getting somewhat kind of stable and calming down because I had this baby I had to take care of. And I say he saved my life.
All this time, you're going to foster homes, hanging out in the street. Nothing happened. You didn't get pregnant. Then
Nope.
you come down to Texas, and whoop, there it is. Now you pregnant. You and your baby's auntie get into it. Must have been a pretty serious fight. But normally, why would you get kicked out of the whole school system?
Because we got in a fight in the school, and it was rough. And we fought, and I was pregnant. And
so the school did not know you were pregnant.
Yeah, they did. And they early at that time when they found out all what the fight, what the drama was, they found out I was pregnant again. They claimed that they didn't want to put me at risk, her at risk, and that I would have to leave the school, go to some alternative school. It was my senior year, mind you. At the end, I got kicked out. So by this time, I wrote them off. I said, I'm not going to no alternative school. My son's father graduated. By this time, we made up a plan. We coming back to Denver. And that's how we ended that. But it was just very, very tough because now our two families are really at odds because my dad didn't know, and my brother, he was here from the military on a whatever leave. Just visiting. They didn't know if my son's dad set it up for the sister to jump me. So they ready to jump him. And it was just a big mess. And so they texted school, said, listen, you got to leave this school. We could give you an alternative backup. They let the dad, Big Arthur, graduate. And at this time, like I said, I was so overwhelmed, head over heels. I'm having this kid. I didn't care what happened. Whatever, I take it as it is. And that's when we planned that we get out of here anyway. I want to go home, back to Denver. Okay. That's my home. And he was willing to come. So we came down here to stay with my aunt. And I hid the pregnancy from my mom, I thought. She found out I was coming back with a boyfriend and she lived with my aunt. She put it together. And I remember she's like, Ayanna, you're back home and I want to get you an appointment, get you a physical. I said, oh, no, I don't need no physical. I don't need anything. No, she said, oh, no, you're going. I was like, okay, Mom, I'm pregnant. She said, I knew. And so we got everything set up there. And my mom took me to Emily Griffin, second chance to enroll in August because we came in June. My mom took me down to Emily Griffin Second Chance, and she enrolled me in that program, and I did get my diploma. I only had a couple more classes to finish. I finished before my son was due in December, and I got my papers, and I was able to graduate in June, and my son was there. At my graduation, his father, my mom, my son was there.
All right.
So I got my diploma. My son was the beginning of me starting to want to find myself, right? There was no more running up and down the streets. There was no more hanging out. I had this little boy looking up to me, right? Remember, I'm a kid that remembered how I felt when my needs weren't met. So I felt that I wanted to try my best to change the narrative for mine. And so I took care of him, stayed home for about a year and a half. And then I decided to go to cosmetology school, which my mom wasn't happy about. And she said, I need to go to college. I said, I don't want to go to college. It's 4 years. I don't want to go to college. I need to find a trade. I want to feed my son now. I want to become independent. You know, I'm still with his dad. I said, I want a job because I did have to get on public assistance. Back then it was called AFPC. But I can remember to this day, they gave me $280 a month, some food stamps, and that wasn't the life I wanted. So I wanted to go to school to get me a skill so I can make me some money and live, you know?
Hear you.
And so I got my cosmetology, went to school for cosmetology, graduated with that. Still with my son's father. And I told my son's father, I said, we're gonna raise this kid in a home with a dog. We need to own a home. So we both worked, and by the time we were 21, we bought our first home for our son.
Man.
Yeah, it was important. I wanted my son to have that, right? I wanted him to have stability. And I've worked hard ever since for that. For I have two kids, but I worked hard for them to have that. It's important. A lot of kids don't have stability, and stability is important.
These issues aren't just for a boy or a girl or a man or a
Mm-hmm.
woman. We start off with these good intentions, you know, like you want to do these things. Did it continue like that, or was there ever like a breakdown in the program?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's why I kind of just wanted to give a little bit of my upbringing, what some of my traumas were, and how it impacted me. And the reason why I brought up earlier, I'm gonna go back to when I said I was 11 and I drank wine coolers. So keep that in mind. Wine coolers at the age of 11. Didn't make sense till later. But even though I had my son and I wanted this house, that didn't mean everything was beautiful. I still smoke weed myself. I still wasn't able to be in a relationship with my son's father that was healthy. I was a very dominant female, very aggressive, very angry because I dealt with my trauma with my mom, the stuff I witnessed with my father. Then I was a victim of abuse myself at 11. I'm not going to go in detail about that.
Well, another episode of Where Were You? And we would like to thank our guests for this evening. Also want to thank New Me. New Me helps sponsor Where Were You? So go on and check it out. New Me /Arkway. Also, go on and hit that like. Go on and hit subscribe. Go on and hit that share. Go on and leave a comment. And if you find anyone that has a story, let me know. And hey, you bless someone today.